All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. We're looking at a wildly fascinating thought experiment today, a story that somehow mashes up surreal cosmic bureaucracy with that very real, everyday exhaustion of modern burnout. We're exploring a piece called God's Understudy, and honestly, it's going to completely flip how you think about invisible labor. So just picture this for a second. Imagine waking up to find out that the actual creator of the universe simply decided they've had enough. They're completely done with the infinite weight of existence, totally tired of balancing those impossible scales of suffering and meaning, and they just submit their 2 weeks' notice. What on earth happens next?
Section 1. When God quits. The ultimate resignation. So, up in the administrative wing of the Celestial Bureau, which is this place that kind of exists everywhere and nowhere all at once, the very first sign of a massive cosmic shift wasn't some dramatic thunder or lightning. Actually, it was the break room coffee. For 4.7 billion years, it tasted like burned regret, and then suddenly, tasted perfect. Because God sent out this hilariously dry memo to all staff reading, "I quit. After what is technically both forever and 5 minutes, I have decided to step down. But coffee was supposed to be bad. Don't fix it. The awfulness was the point." It's such an absurd bureaucratic setup, right? But it immediately drops this massive, mind-bending philosophical problem in our laps. Someone has got to take over the maintenance of reality.
And enter Maya Chen. She's a middle manager in the Bureau, officially holding the title of Deputy Assistant Coordinator of Minor Ironies. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, minor ironies are essentially the smallest possible miracles. Think of them as perfectly choreographed coincidences that just look like accidents, like, say, finding a crisp $20 bill on the exact day you couldn't afford lunch. Anyway, Maya starts noticing the universe shifting around her, completely oblivious to the fact that she is about to be dragged right into the Department of Succession. Moving on to Section 2, the ultimate job interview, the impossible criteria. Because, as you might guess, replacing the creator of the universe, not exactly your standard HR process. The adjuster, this entity in charge of the succession, starts interviewing candidates, and the qualifications are just absolutely mind-bending. I mean, obviously you need omniscience, omnipotence, the ability to fake omnibenevolence, but the real catch is in those final requirements: total self-erasure, and, crucially, the fundamental desire to not want the job. The logic here is that the very second you actually desire to be God, you show a preference, which makes you less than infinite, and boom, you are immediately disqualified.
So looking at the final test for the top 3 candidates, Maya, Elaine, and Sarah, it's super interesting because it wasn't about testing their ability to miraculously fix the universe. Maya had to manage a city's probability cascade. Elaine oversaw a trauma support group, and Sarah was placed with a family dealing with a terminal illness. The whole point? They were tested purely on their ability to manage human suffering while remaining completely, 100% unattached to the outcome. They literally had to create the conditions for meaning to exist without ever forcing their own personal preferences onto the situation. Which brings us to Section 3, the burden of omniscience, the weight of small things. During her specific test, Maya has to observe and guide a really burned-out social worker in Baltimore named Michelle Hart. Michelle has spent 30 years caring for people with basically zero recognition. And watching Michelle, Maya learns this devastating truth that really highlights the core philosophical shift of this whole explainer. See, we traditionally view God as a person, an external manager who steps in to fix problems. But fixing things requires having a preference. The actual reality of the job is God as a principle, a distributed consciousness that just maintains the conditions for free will, observing everything with this infinite neutral acceptance. The hard truth here is that God can't save us from suffering, because removing that suffering would actually destroy the meaning that comes from our own choices. But wow, there is a terrifying cost to taking on that kind of infinite burden. It's this phenomenon called the forgetting. Basically, it's a tragic, gradual process where you shift from being a person with memories, a name, a whole personal history, into becoming just a pure infinite principle. Now, Maya, Elaine, and Sarah actually pass their tests. They end up forming this distributed God network, basically 3 minds sharing the infinite load. But to pull it off, they have to completely lose their own identities. They literally have to erase themselves just to keep the universe running. Section 4, the recursive loop, the mind-bending paradox. Okay, so years into their reign, this newly distributed God notices what looks like a catastrophic flaw that's threatening to completely break reality, a massive recursive loop. In one branch, Sarah becomes God's understudy. Then, as God, she sets up the exact conditions that allow a totally different Sarah, in another timeline, to become a social worker. And then that social worker, Sarah, goes on to inspire a future version of Sarah to become the exact kind of person who could take on the role of God. It's wild. Past, present, and future versions of these characters are literally creating the conditions for each other to exist. Naturally, the new gods panic, thinking this infinite loop is going to shatter the universe.
But then it clicks. The loop isn't a bug. The loop is the feature. They realize the loop isn't the problem at all. It is the exact thing holding everything together. The universe doesn't actually need external management. It maintains itself recursively. We're literally all creating the conditions for each other to exist, which completely transforms the very definition of what God actually is.
All right, final part. Section 5. The invisible work. You are the structure. And this is the profound realization that ties all that surreal, cosmic bureaucracy straight back down to the earthly, everyday grind of human existence. Back to you and me. Because when you think about it, what does it actually mean to be God in this kind of universe? Well, it means waking up exhausted. It means showing up and doing the invisible work of caring, accepting a complete lack of recognition, and just maintaining the structure of meaning for others. Whether you're a nurse, a social worker, a teacher, or honestly just a really tired parent, doing that thankless care work means you are literally doing the work of God. You are the one keeping the universe running. Just consider this quote: "The structure of meaning is maintained by people who don't know they're maintaining it. The machinery of the universe is held together by people who are too tired to notice they're holding it." The author's notes point out something incredibly powerful here. The distinction between God and human is basically meaningless. In this framework, God is simply the distributed consciousness of every single person who shows up and does the hard work of caring, even when they know it probably won't be rewarded. So, the very next time you're feeling completely invisible, the next time you're just totally burned out from caring for others, from holding up your little corner of the world without a single thank you, I really want you to ask yourself a question. Are you ready to realize that you are the actual machinery holding reality together? Will you maintain the structure today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.